Hi, my name's Mark, and I'm at a school called Brightworks. My son goes here, and it's a really cool school where the kids do project-based learning. They follow their interests and they do what they're really passionate about. And another father and I heard that the children wanted to make a currency system. And so both of us are really into alternative currency systems and the currency systems that have occurred through history. And so we really wanted to offer the children the complexity and knowledge to use for the creation of their currency system. And so as we started with an introduction to basically ideas about money and to provoke their thought and to really have them really think deeply about what is money. And we of course brought in the things that kids want to see, different kinds of money. I have a friend who has a coin shop, and so I brought in gold, I brought in silver, we brought in old silver certificates and contemporary Federal Reserve note dollars. Even to provoke thought, I brought in a conventional silver dollar, but then also a Spider-Man coin that was a silver dollar to say, well, which one's money? This one's worth $31 and this one's worth $30 to $1. What's the difference? And brought in worthless coinage, and I brought in, I even had a Zimbabwe $100 billion bill, but it's gone, or 100 trillion, and it's gone. I don't know what happened to it. Someone took it, unfortunately. But the children, it was really fun.
One thing is worthless.
Yeah, the one thing that's worthless they took. And we brought in a lot of books to provoke thought, and they loved this one by Jim Rickards, the cover, Currency Wars. They really liked the farcical depiction of currency fighting a war. And so from those initial thoughts and those initial inquiries that the children had, we thought, what's a good starting point? And Thor and I came up with a game called Survive the Winter. And it was basically a barter game. They were told, each one of you is a household, and you want your household to survive the winter. And the winter's on the way. And you need 2 coats, you need 4 pieces of bread, and you need 8 sticks. But we passed them out in a very unequal way, so that some kids got a few sticks, and some got more bread, and some got more fuel. And they traded back and forth to get all the supplies they needed for their household. But what I didn't tell them was I didn't give them enough so that each household would have enough to survive. And the children said, Quinn doesn't have enough to survive the winter. What are we going to do? And I said, I don't know. What are you going to do? And they really thought about it. And then one of them said, Quinn can move in with me. And they did. And then they had more resources than they needed. And so it was a really important lesson, because I wanted them to know that they have the ability to bend the rules according to need, because they needed to have this person survive. And that was a critical aspect in helping them, so that they would take the elements that they needed from their lessons and their understanding of different currency systems, and combining them into fitting the needs that they wanted for their market, in their school, in their community. And so we went from there, and we had them do an exercise on mutual credit. And mutual credit is basically a system in which there's a neutral position, and you either get credits for selling or debits for buying. So it's not a one-to-one trade, but there are multiple trades that go across the community. We first did it with a game that we developed where a storm has gone through their community. It's damaged their homes, and it's scattered their animals, their lives. Let's just say you lost your goats, and you needed 7 hours of help from other people. And then your home was damaged, and you needed 5 hours help from other people for that. Also, the community mill was damaged, a place where they all ground their grain, we told them, or else it would rot if it wasn't repaired in time. And so they helped each other with a mutual credit system to basically repair their homes and get their livestock. And they really got to have an understanding of how mutual credit can be used for time. And they did it really well. They all reached about an equal point toward the neutral position. Now, we thought also they need to understand this can be used for goods. So we did an exercise in which they're all given roles in the community, like hog farmer, or one owned a wood mill or a wheat farmer, and they all had needs, and they all had things they could offer. And they used the mutual credit to exchange those things in a transactional way across many people. So again, not just one-to-one even trades, but uneven trades that essentially went toward the mean. When we were working with the mutual credit system, one boy said, and it was this boy here, Ben, he said, well, what if I move mine up just a little bit? And we thought, wow, that's great. He's talking about justice, transparency. He's talking about the concepts of cheating, and so we got into that, and we said, okay, let's design a game where we gamble, where we deal with issues of risk. We deal with issues of somebody cheating the system. We deal with issues of having inside information within a system, and are these aspects that we want to have exist within the system. And so we did a gambling game, and it looks a little bit funny, it looks a little confusing, and I put down pictures of people who have taken great risks in their lives, really great thinkers. So sort of disregard that a little bit. Mainly it's just numbers on a board. The children were each given a card before they put down their gambling chips. Most all the cards were blank, except for one. One child was given a card with a number on it. And when a child was given a card with a number on it, that was a card that was the winner, and they were the cheater. And if they put their gambling chip down on 5, they could win. But before the winning card was revealed, okay, by me, the dealer, we would pick one of these 3 cards. Exposed cheater, cheater goes free, or a new hand. If the child put their gambling chip on 5, and we picked exposed cheater, we would expose them as the cheater. But if they put it on 6 and we pulled exposed cheater, they wouldn't be exposed, and they might win the bet, and they might win all the chips. And so some children chose to maximize their cheating by going right next to the winning card. Others went right on the winning card, hoping for cheater goes free, and other children were upset about being chosen as a designated cheater. They did not want to cheat. They went as far away from the winning card as possible. But mainly they were all looking intensely at one another to see small details about what their eyes looked like when they looked at their card, to see if one or the other was a cheater. They tried to look through the card, so we had to put black on the back so they couldn't see through them, because at first you could. They tried to just get into the mental processes of everyone else to try to figure out who the cheater was. And the children were very concerned about, essentially, social justice. It was amazing. And then we moved on from here to a game we called the central banking game. The central banking game we designed like Monopoly. But instead of having each player start with money, like Monopoly does, we had them start with no money. There's no money on the board, but all the money that enters the board enters through debt, and it's debt with interest. So each child has a balance sheet, a record of their debts and the interest that needs to be paid on those debts, and they have a schedule of when they need to pay those debts. And as they move around the board, they can buy property with debt, and the children can also develop the property with housing, a hotel, a ranch, a mine. They can farm it. When they develop the property, then they can charge other players who land on that property. And the children all form different strategies about how to deal with debt. Paying principal early, taking out enormous amounts of debt, and so forth. And they could also assign value to the properties, and the property values increase because of essentially unlimited credit. But overall, the children didn't like this game. They found it somewhat intolerable, the level of debt that they incurred. And pretty much overall they wanted to, and they talked about this, staging a revolt against the bank. And we asked, well, what would you do if you staged a revolt? How would you have a different system? Okay, and they had a lot of great suggestions. And during the same time as we played these games, we also had history lessons, essentially, where we talked about ancient Egypt, how they worked. They had a demurrage system that came out of food storage, and there was also a demurrage system in the Central Middle Ages. The history of the dollar and how the dollar came out of Bohemia and so forth. Now, after we finished the central banking game, we really got into the creative part of what do you want your currency system to be? What do you want it to look like? First, what do you want it to do? And the children said, we want to buy and sell toys. And they really had a big argument, about what it was going to be and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of that, they finally decided we want to have a market on a scheduled day. And it was their first step, and it was a big step. We want a market. The next meeting, we talked about, well, what's the system going to be like? They wanted a mutual credit system. So they came up with this over here, where they said, well, instead of sliders, let's do a thing where we have, like tokens, and we'll make them on a laser printer, because they wanted something they could touch. They wanted money. And this boy Connor came up with this little slider idea where he said, what we could do is we could have a stack of coins, you have a zero line in the middle. So if you go below that line, you're into your negative, into your credit zone, and above that line, you're into positive. And so the kids said, okay, well, that's great, let's do that. And so what they developed then was this, where they had their coins, they made coins with a laser cutter, and these are worth 10 units each, and then down below, these are worth 1. Now, what they did that was really ingenious is they said, well, the credit line, where when you're below it, you're negative, and above you're positive, why don't we instead, you're above that line, that you're charged demurrage? And it was great, because they thought they wanted the aspects that they had heard about from ancient Egypt, where you had high velocity of money, because it discouraged the holding of money, that money was being used. They wanted their money in their market to be used. They didn't want it to be stored up, but they wanted toys to flow. So I had never heard of that before, a mutual credit system with demurrage on it, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. So they put demurrage on top of that. But then there was a girl that asked, she said, but how do we save money? And of course I was like, oh my gosh, that's a really tough question. What the children developed was a savings card. And the savings card was where it was basically a commitment card, where if a child committed to a toy that they wanted to buy, but it was more money than they had, it was more money than demurrage allowed. If the child committed to that, let's just say it was 200 units, that if they committed to that, they wouldn't be charged a demurrage fee. But if they broke the commitment, demurrage would be applied to the money if it was going to re-enter the system. So we had the question, well, what do we do with the money that's been that's come from the system and gone into demurrage? Because it's a fixed currency system. And the reason they wanted a fixed currency supply was we had an experiment where they had unlimited credit. And what that led to was a small hyperinflation. And Thor and I discussed it with the teachers. And what came of it was this Caught in the Act card. And a Caught in the Act card is basically a card the teachers, they can write down, Audrey held the door open for the rest of the students as they enter the school. And that card goes into a bin at the beginning of market day, and 4 Caught in the Act cards are pulled out, and those children, they get the demurrage that has come from the prior market. And so it re-enters the system. It's just to help encourage helpfulness in the community. Anyway, that's it. Basically, the kids at Brightworks developed an incredible system that went way beyond Thor and I's expectations of what that system could be. They've had 2 market days where it's worked beautifully, and I truly feel that if children can make a money system for their world, and they can do it with such beauty and elegance, and it works, they use it in their marketplace, and if they can do it, we as adults, we can deal with these things, and we can make a new money for a new world that will work to serve us and serve our environment, and do kind of a wonderful thing. Thanks a lot. And the kids, they're awesome. We're going to have a market in about 15 minutes, and they're jazzed.